What's going on, people? Thank you so much for clicking today's video and just taking a few seconds to smash that thumbs up button just for that introduction right there. And also, I hope that drone footage got you as excited as I am to share this commercial conversion project with you all, because yes, that's what this video is going to be about. Now, because I obviously have too much time on my hands with this project finally finished and a new one starting in a few months, I thought I'd do a few timestamps for you all just to make your life a little bit easier. And what I've also done is I've just actually made a few chapters. So if you just look along the bottom here on the YouTube, it not only looks pretty neat, but it also tells you what I'm going to be speaking about for that particular section of the video. Now, of course, to get the most value, although I'm starting to hate that word right now, I'd actually ask you to stick around, as I will be giving you not only 100% transparency in relation to this deal and everything that maybe you need to know or any questions you have about commercial conversions, but also I want to give you an insight on how you yourselves can get involved in commercial conversion projects. Now, true story time. Since purchasing my first ever property in 2013, this by far was the first project I have genuinely been so stressed about. I've had roofs fall on me, I've had builders rob me of £8,000, I've had business partners even fleece our accounts for their own projects. I've had people writing call for sex messages on the actual side of my house, and many other horror stories that, yes, I'll share with you over the duration of this channel. You see, for the last 18 months, I have been attached to this project, from initially viewing it with my business partner to being rejected and then outbid, and then seeing it come back on the market, to then procuring it and then finally finishing it. So it's definitely been a roller coaster of a journey, and one that I want to share with you so that by the end of this two-part video series, you will know more about commercial conversions than you did before you started watching them. But before I start, I kind of have to tell you about a little lie. Let's roll that intro. Okay, so let's get the little porky out the way that I just told you. You see, at the beginning of this video, you saw some drone footage and it clearly stated the GDV was £750,000. Now, GDV is the gross development value, which is the expected value, all circumstances being normal, when it is sold to a willing purchaser on the open market. And for this one, we had a GDV of £750,000. Technically, however, we've not had our valuation back. In fact, we actually put in our application a GDV of £800,000 for our refinance, based on not only the work that we've done, but the income it can generate and what we believe the going rate is at this particular time in the market. But sadly, we won't hear back from our valuation until the 2nd of October, which basically means 5 more sleepless nights until we hear back from the surveyor's report and see what we would then be able to release when we refinance this particular project. Moving on, let's jump into this actual project. So the first thing I want to talk about is purchasing the actual property, i.e. this site. Now, this was actually offered through a relationship my partner, not life partner, business partner and good friend managed to develop with a surveyor stroke agent who actually deals with a lot of commercial stuff, and he gets good stock basically passed his way. Now, at this time, neither myself or my business partner actually had any commercial conversion experience, and we were actually offered this when it was listed on the market a little bit later on at offers in excess of £325,000. Now, I always say the best way to learn is by doing. There is only so much theory that we can actually learn, and there's only so many podcasts or so many books that we can actually read. So knowing that we had partners who are now working with on a full-time basis who have done a 50+ unit commercial conversion, I knew I could always fall back on some helping hands and some words of wisdom from somebody who's been there and done it. So knowing this, we still had some work to do and we still had some things to think about before we actually put an offer down and try to buy this site. Because let's be honest, £325,000 is not the kind of cash you just find hiding in the side of your sofa. Plus, we also weren't sure that if we'd have enough money to actually buy it. So in terms of financing, we had to work out what we could actually raise. And we broke this down into the following. The first thing was we calculated how much money we had jointly, myself and my business partner. Now, at this stage, we had personal funds of around 40% to purchase this property that we could put aside for the next 12 months. and effectively we were going to bridge the deal, renovate the project and exit accordingly. Now from a hindsight perspective, this actually would have been a lot cheaper for us, but that's a video for another day. The second thing is we had 2 investors who were very eager to work with us as well. So we also had that possibility as well. Do we JV with another 2 people, pool our resources together and move on from there? And then finally, I had another investor, a personal investor who invested in myself and loaned me £180,000 a few months prior to that in return for some interest. So finances at this point, especially for the purchase price, wasn't going to be a major issue, but we still needed to know more. And so would you at this stage, especially if you want to be doing something similar to this. Now, the next thing we needed to truly understand was the build cost to actually renovate this out and to understand how many units we could actually get out of the 2 existing buildings. So yes, like the professional investors that we were, we reached out to some architects and we showed them the basic plans of the actual buildings as they were and our thought process in terms of what we were hoping to achieve from this, and asked, is this feasible? And then of course we went out onto site and we did something only real experts do. The cream of the crop, the greatest investors in the world. Yes, that was, we walked around the building and we chopped it up in our heads. We were literally walking from room to room thinking, I think we can get a flat here. We can probably get a flat here. This one looks slightly too big so we could chop it into 2. This one looks a little bit small so maybe we could kind of extend into the next room. And that's pretty much what we did. And we did this for about an hour and we played around with it and we kind of fell on the lucky number 10. And I know you're thinking this is some real high level stuff here. And of course, I'd have to agree. But what we were doing was judging by our previous experience on general refurbs and HMOs, which we both owned at this particular time. We thought, well, how much more complex can this really be? And we settled on 10 flats. And luckily the architect agreed. However, we then had conflicting thoughts because one thing I always do with a property is try and look at the many ways I can extract value from it. And one of the other things that we could have done was to convert the bigger building into 7 flats and then renovate the smaller one back into a house. But figures wise, this kind of didn't add up. And if anyone is interested or anyone cares about why it didn't add up and why we didn't go through that, then of course I can run through that in the comments down below. Now at this stage, the only thing we then had to do was to calculate the rough renovation cost, because of course you can purchase something, but if it's going to cost too much or the NGDV isn't big enough, then it's just not worth doing. Now, obviously I have experience through investing over the last 7 or 8 years, and I've not only done my own renovations, but I've also done renovations for clients as a project manager as well. So I thought I could kind of calculate the rough build cost in relation to converting this to 10 flats. And today I was actually 5% off. But I did have to get reassurances too, and I recommend this to anyone. No matter how good you think you are, there are always people better than you. So the simple thing I did here was just to get 3 separate build team quotes for the works that we wanted done. So what I did then is I got those figures, i.e. the build cost in terms of what I thought and what the builders thought. I got the cost from the architect in regards to the actual workload. Then I need to get the cost of utilities. Now, having never ever worked with utilities on a big scale prior to this, one of the things I had to do was go and get guidance from our team. So we went back to the individuals who had done 50 units and we basically said, look, how much do we kind of need to put aside? Because I just have no idea about utilities. So therefore they gave us a figure, and to be honest, they were pretty much on the money. So at this point now we had all our costs of buying it and also renovating it. And therefore the only thing left to do now was to further analyze the deal in terms of, is there enough profit? Is this worth us pursuing? So to do this, we did the following. Step 1, calculate the total GDV of the project. And we did this by working out what 10 flats with a car space are going for in that particular area, by simply looking at recent comparables, which I hope I've explained well enough today on this channel. And we also did it by square foot too. And this gave us an indication of the value if we were to convert the 2 buildings into flats. Step 2, profit. You have to make profit, right? We then subtracted 25% profit off the end GDV. So now at this point we had all the costs involved, which included things like your purchase costs, such as your stamp, your solicitors, your legals or charges, and also the loan agreements for the investors as well. We then had professional fees, which included your architects, your building regs, and of course the utilities company that we used at that particular time. Then we had renovation costs, which includes obviously labor and materials, and then holding costs, which are sometimes forgotten, which include your council tax, your electric, your water, and also your investor interest. And then finally, contingency costs, which I call shit going wrong. Make sure you have contingency. And then what we did is a high level subtraction of the GDV price minus a sum of all these costs that I've just mentioned, and it gave us a figure. And this figure was so important because this was the figure that was the maximum amount that we could actually offer on this project. Now, as I always mention in a lot of my videos, is you should never let emotion dictate your decisions. Now, obviously we were highly invested in this from a time perspective, but in order to secure the deal, we had to make a judgment based on logic and based on that particular figure, rather than letting our minds convince us otherwise that this is a deal and we can still make it work somehow. So always listen to the spreadsheet numbers. Unless of course you're shit at spreadsheets, then get somebody else to help you with spreadsheets, and then of course listen to theirs. Now at this stage we had this number, and this is where things got a little bit tough, because as it was a sealed bid process, you ideally want to put your highest number in, but you also want to save a few pennies as well, because you don't want to go too high and then know later on that you could have actually got it for cheaper. So what we did is we decided to be a little bit smart and go in a couple of grand cheaper than our figure in the spreadsheet. And obviously thinking we were smart and savvy, the outcome, well, we got rejected. Now, although we actually had a bit more money in the bank at this point, sadly, another person's offer was accepted. So yes, we could not simply just go back in and say, hey guys, we actually had a little bit more money in the pot. But with that, what we did, and this is really, really important, and I advise anyone to do this, is firstly, we thanked our contact who gave us this deal and give us an insight in relation to the vendors. And we sat with him and we said, if anything else comes up, please do let us know. But also, if this falls out of bed, please let us know too. Now, falls out of bed is professional property terminology for if it messes up or the deal doesn't go through. Now, it won't take rocket science to tell you that this in fact fell out of bed, or else I'll just be doing a video talking about somebody else's project, which will be pretty strange. Now, usually with normal vendors, not saying the NHS aren't normal by the way, because that's who we purchased it from. I absolutely love the NHS, but that's a video for another day that I will probably never ever make. You can usually gain bargaining power once a deal falls out of bed, because at this point you can normally lower your prices or play a little bit of a hardball, because they've just been hit with a disappointment. They've just been hit with a deal falling out of bed and they're thinking, oh my God, I've got to go back. But the NHS, well, they work differently. They don't do that. So at this stage, we went back in when it fell out of bed and we got the offer accepted at £364,000 with an exchange of contracts in 45 days, and we were allowed to complete 1 to 2 weeks later. So now we were excited. We were literally jumping on board for this big project. Now, just a quick note around this. I mentioned our finances and how we could actually pursue it. I think around this time, we actually took a different route and we chose to work on this project with a friend of ours. And the cost for us, yes, was slightly high, but our rationale at this stage was working together can create better outcomes. It can definitely be more fun, but also there will be scope to potentially work together in the future. Now, many of you know the offers on deals and the acceptance phase of actually getting deals is very tedious. It takes many attempts. It's a numbers game, a lot of spreadsheets, a lot of calculations, a lot of back and forth, but it's not actually the most difficult part. It's just the most boring part. It's the most mundane part of the process. The most difficult part, however, is making the deal a deal through execution and skill acquisition. So many deals actually go tits up, but you never hear about them. And I say this only because I have experienced this too. I've worked with people, real life gurus, a while back that really did leave me in the lurch. But let's not dwell on gurus for this video, and let's keep it a little bit upbeat, because now we have to discuss the conversion part. Okay, so how do you do a commercial conversion? Now, we managed to do this under permitted development rights, and I'm going to put a disclaimer here as well, as I can't run through 100% of the intricate details. One, due to my memory, but two, the length of this video is really getting out of hand. And the chances also of anyone still with me are very low. So maybe if you're with me, let me know in the comments below, just so I can show you some love back and show you my appreciation. But if there are any questions that I miss out, then please do ask them below, and I promise you I will get back to you. Now, for the commercial conversion part of this, the most important part is your team. If your team are unable to deliver, you will sadly fail. It doesn't matter how positive they are or how great they seem or how many Instagram photos they take standing next to building sites. It matters if they can finish the project for you, the way you and them agreed for it to be finished. So let's talk team members. Our team basically consisted of, well, me, obviously, the tradesmen who were going to be on site pretty much all the time, the professionals, i.e. the architects and the building regs, and the project managers. But even then, we were hit with obstacles, because when we first started and we actually did the first strip out and we started to look at the designs that were initially drawn, we had to make some amendments. We had to alter certain things, just the ease of access, some common sense issues, including making the site a better living experience for people potentially moving in or buying it off us. We had to alter things, but nothing structural. One of the things we really wanted to do was avoid structural stuff, because when you do structural things to properties, you've got to expect your cost to increase, not just for the work itself, but also for the structural engineer involved as well. Unfortunately for us, our team had these types of individuals who were able to advise us on how to do simple things. Well, they seem simple now, like repositioning entrances and doorways and maintaining the structural element of the building without the need for any sort of RSJs or anything requiring any sort of major structural calculations or amendments. Now, this therefore meant the start of the project saw me personally taking a step back. A step back in terms of delegating and managing the actual project from end to end. I was actually kind of doing a shadowing experience to somebody who had a lot more years of skill and experience than myself. A quick tip: don't be afraid to do this. We all like to think that we're shit hot at certain things and that we can do pretty much everything, even if we've been doing it for a while. But it's always a great asset to be able to humble yourself and learn and listen from other people. People can always teach you something new. In fact, anyone can. And sometimes it's how to do things, and in other cases, it's also how not to do things. So the things like acoustics and utilities was something that I just had no experience with, or neither did my partner. So rather than try and pretend we knew about this, I learned from the people who actually had experience in it. So remember, you don't always have to know everything to start before you go ahead with a project. You just need to know how to find the answers and ask questions as well. Questions such as, why are we doing this? Or what's the actual benefit of doing it this way as opposed to this way? You see, anything that shows curiosity is a great thing. Be like a child, be curious to learn and become better. So anyway, as the project rolled on, although sometimes uncomfortable, I did start to manage to get a little bit more hands-on. I did start to understand where we were taking this project and what we were doing. So I was able to liaise with workers and understand the procedure and ensure that we were adhering to the schedule of works that we had set out. Side note, a schedule of works is so important. It will basically allow you to hold people accountable, but also keep people focused on the task. The idea is basically to allow as little scope creep as possible, and also to ensure that tasks are done within the time frames and costs. So just an idea of some of the work that we actually put into this. I'm just going to put some images up on the screen right now just to show you a basic overview of the schedule of works. So hopefully that gives you a broad overview of what we actually had to do for this particular project. But of course, until we get the valuation come back, I won't be actually running through the exact figures. The third one, capital allowances. Now I put this here because this was actually a big boost for our project and something I only briefly knew about. Remember when I said earlier, you don't need to know everything before starting a project? Well, capital allowances was exactly that. I had heard of it, but I didn't know enough about it. So what I'm going to do is just on this screen, just put some information and literature that you can quickly read if you so wish about what capital allowances are. So the reason I knew this is because I was listening to a podcast. Not the Find Your Voice podcast, an actual property podcast. And this is why I say that most of the information, other than learning the things that only a live project can truly show you, can be found on your podcast, on your books, this YouTube channel, and from people in the industry. So you don't need to pay for it. And then yes, I used the brilliant tool that we all know of Google, and I found that some people actually specialize in working these calculations out for you. So at this stage, we settled for this company here, and again, I'll just put this on the screen for you all just to have a look at, and it showed us how much capital allowances we were getting for a fixed fee. Now that is a lot of capital allowances here, and I think the fee was around £8,000 to £9,000, but we knew we were benefiting from £133,476 of capital allowances, which is obviously going to help our tax bill. So I guess the final pointers I have on this part of the video is paying fees for services should definitely be considered if the outcome is of higher value to yourselves. Now the next part of this video will actually run through the following. 1, learning from the things that we could definitely do better. So there were so many lessons that I want to teach you guys as well. 2, learn from the things we did well. 3, how COVID, the whole experience behind COVID taught us stuff that now we can hopefully future-proof ourselves for future projects. And 4, the revaluation pack, all the figures and how you can also have that valuation pack for yourselves for absolutely free. I spent like so long on it. It's about 78 pages, and I'll obviously share that with you all as well for when you have your evaluation days. And that's it. So I truly hope you found this information useful. If there's any questions, of course, drop them down in the comments below and I'll get around to answering them as soon as I possibly can. And until next time, don't forget to hit that like button, and thanks for watching.